Hey, Skylar here from the Mint Change You Can Wear. Today I'm going to talk about straightening crooked or wobbly rings. I get the question all the time, what do you do with a wobbly ring? How do you fix it? There are 3 methods I like to use. I also want to let you guys know, you guys can try these methods out and also all other kinds of coin ring methods at my training classes. I have 2-day hands-on training classes on my website you can sign up for at changeyoucanwear.net. Alright, let's get to straightening some crooked rings. So here are some of the examples I have to fix today. This one is a Morgan dollar. You can see it's a little deformed and crooked. And then this one here is a Franklin half dollar. This is a really good example of what we can fix here. You can see it's off kilter too. So I'm going to have to thank right off the bat Greg Jones for sending me this one and Travis Searcy for sending me this one. They're from the group Coin Ring Crafters. I put out a request on there to see if someone would send me a good wobbly or tilted ring, and these guys stepped up to the plate. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys. A lot of times you can fix a slightly tilted ring without any adverse effects to the ring at all. But sometimes, you know, there's a point of no return where you've bent the coin to a certain extent where it's never going to be perfect again, but it'll be a whole lot better. So that's what I'm shooting for with these guys. Okay, the first one's going to be the stretch and reduce method. Basically, you just re-stretch the coin out and then reduce it again. And the second one is the Swedish rat method. That helps a lot of problems, especially with wobbly rings. And the third one is the stainless steel folding mandrel and a small die. And depending on how bad the ring is, you might need to use a combination of the 3. So we'll see how it goes here. So the first step we're going to do with these 2 rings is anneal them, get them soft again so we can start working them. So all I want to do now is just get them to a nice dull red, not a bright red. And once we get it there, we're going to quench it in some water, cool it off. And I have to mention this, quenching a non-ferrous metal like silver or copper does not harden it like it would with a ferrous metal, like a steel or an iron. Just a different metal, different animal. Alright, now I'm going to repeat the same thing with the Franklin, and we'll start to form these. Now the very first thing I want to do with this Franklin, and we're going to try getting to a size 11 with this Franklin when we're done. But the first thing I want to do is inspect this cut edge, file it, sand it for sure, but file it if necessary to make sure if there's any cracks we get rid of them, and that we're not going to split it as we start working it. The first method we're going to use on this guy is the stretch and reduce method. If we can get it done with that, we're good to go. But if that doesn't work, we'll move on to other methods. After doing my initial cleanup, I did notice there is a slight crack starting to form right in there. Hard to see on film, but it's there. So what I want to make sure to do is file that to where you get rid of that crack completely before you get started again. If there's a crack or a split that you leave in it and you start to stretch it, it'll expand and it'll get worse. So we need to get rid of it first. So now you can see it's all filed down nicely and then sanded so we can avoid splitting this thing as we start to stretch it on the ring stretcher. And that is the next step. And another little trick I learned recently, throw a bag, just a grocery bag over it, it's doubled up, just stick it on the top, stick your ring on, and just pop a hole in it like that. And that will that'll completely save the inside of your ring. You won't get one scratch on it. What you really want to do is stretch it all the way out to make it uniform cone shaped again. Make sure to give it a slight turn as you go. Alright, so you can see it's starting to look a little more uniform now. So that's getting close. We were stretching on the ring stretcher this way. So what I want to do now is flip it around and stretch it out reeded side down. And this is going to help uniform it a little bit more. And you want to do it to where it just stretches out to where it starts to close up on this. You don't want to go stretching it a whole lot farther. Just enough to make it uniform. So I'm starting to feel some resistance now. I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to start sizing it down to a size 11. Now the first thing I want to do is just put some Pepe lube on that edge that we're going to be sizing down just to make sure it slides down nice and evenly as we go. Pick the appropriate die. Alright, it's starting to look pretty darn even actually. I'll go a little bit farther now. Alright, you can see it's looking a lot better, but it might not be quite enough. I'm going to try putting the cut side down and sizing it down just a tiny bit, see if that rectifies the problem. If not, what we have to do is probably stretch it again, just like we did the first time, and then repeat the process. It's a lot closer. If you look at it on this side, it's sticking out that way a tiny bit, and this side is sticking in a little bit right there. So it would need to be restretched and then shrank again. But what I'm going to do actually this time is I'm going to stretch it out and then throw it in the Swedish wrap so we can see the other method. But before I do that, we need to re-anneal this thing. Now it's all re-annealed and ready to start stretching. And what I want to do is I'm going to sticking on the ring stretcher this way, the reeded side down. And the reasoning for that is when you stick it into the Swedish wrap, if this reeded side, which we have up inside the Swedish wrap as we squish it down, if that's not bigger than this underside here, what can happen is you're going to hurt the detail in the face because the face is going to hit the die. Even through your wrapping, it can cause problems. So it's always best to have that slightly larger on the top before you stick it in the Swedish wrap. So I'm going to put it reed side down to stretch it. So now we have it all coned out again, and we're going to start wrapping it with Teflon tape and sticking it in the Swedish wrap die. What I'm using here is a 1-ton arbor press from Harbor Freight. Obviously Jason's Swedish wrap die, the medium one. The plate I get from King's Coin Rings Tools, and it just fits in here instead of this thing. And this just centers the Swedish wrap inside of this. Alright, so stick our thing in there. And this is a Ross coin ring pusher is what I like to use. You get them at rosscoinrings.com. Nice and slow and steady. Alright, that should be all we need. And this is what it looks like once we've unwrapped it out of the Swedish wrap die. So it looks a lot more uniform now. That's great. And it's sitting about at 11.5, so I'm going to stretch it up just a little bit more so we can hit the target size of 11. I'm going to need to stretch it up to probably almost a 13 in order to do that. So we're going to re-anneal it. After Swedish wrap, it's always good to re-anneal, and then we will start sizing it down. And now what we're going to do, we're going to stretch it like we normally would, which would be reed side facing up on the ring stretcher. And we're going to try hitting that target size of about 12 3/4 to 13. Just under 13, and we're ready to start sizing it again. Alright, so here's what it looks like once we get done sizing it. No more wobble, no more lopsided or anything, it's good to go. So now all we need to do is finish it by deburring that inside with a deburring tool or a file, and then clean it up and antique it, and you'll be good to go. So now for the second one, the Morgan dollar. This one actually might be a little more challenging than the Franklin. And for this one, I want to use a different method. We're not going to use the restretching method, we're not going to use the Swedish wrap method if we can get away with it. What I do want to use is this. This is Jason's quarter die. It's a 1.0 by 0.9. With the Morgan dollar, I have to use a little bit bigger die, which is this one. If you're going to do a Franklin like we were just doing this method, we'd use a smaller one yet. It's always important for it to be a 17-degree die. And the reason being, we're going to be shoving this down through the coin into it. And this marries with a 17-degree die a lot better than it does a 25-degree die. Another thing we're going to use to make sure we're not hitting the end of this in our press is this, the ring bearer. This is a new tool from Jason's Works, and it's originally designed to go with the Swedish wrap method. It helps prevent you smashing your Swedish wrap coin that goes to the bottom from hitting the press you're pressing it with. But I like using it for this straightening method a whole lot more than I even like using it for that. Here's how it works. You put your appropriate die onto the ring bearer. You set your crooked ring on top, and what you need to do is make sure you have enough room to stretch that ring all the way out. And then in order to save the detail of the inside of your coin, put a piece of toilet paper up on top. And what I like to do is I like to take 3 squares of toilet paper, fold them till you get 3, and then fold it in half again. And that gives you pretty much plenty of material to save the inside of that coin ring. Now the inside of this coin ring has already been pretty chewed up from something. That's really material. I'm just trying to show you guys what I would do in order to save it if it was perfect still. Once we have it all like this, We will fit our folding mandrel down into it. And then we're going to put it all in a 6-ton press. Just make sure everything's nice and lined up underneath it there, so that way everything's even. If you have this coin off center, you could mess up the reeds of your coin by having it hit inside of the hole of the die, which is not a good thing. So make sure the reeds on the outside of the die. We just want to keep stretching until we feel that we've have some resistance from the coin being stretched all the way out. And I think we're about there. Let's take a look. All right, here's what we have stretched out. It looks like it's pretty much touching the stretching mandrel everywhere, so I think we've about done it. Okay, so you can see it looks pretty uniform now. Really uniform, actually. So we did a good job. And you can see there's no additional damage on the inside of this coin ring. The toilet paper totally saved the detail on the inside, which is awesome. Now I have my Morgan dollar sitting in an appropriate sized die. It's a 17-degree die. And I'm going to put this on top. It's a little coin ring anvil. And then we're going to press it down to start sizing it. And believe it or not, that one simple easy step, straighten that thing right out and it's good to go again. So you can't beat that. That method is actually the method I used most of the time. That's the best method I've found to do it. It's quickest, easiest, and by far the most effective. So now that's all left to do is take those two rings and finish them up.